Billionaire man yells at black waitress. She says something that silences the entire restaurant. Did you touch my tablet with those filthy hands? Do you know how much that costs? Leonard Thorne's booming voice cut through the opulent hum of the Gilded Spoon restaurant like a chainsaw, instantly halting every hushed conversation. 28-year-old Sophia Reynolds stood motionless next to table 9, holding the polished tray she had just used to serve the tech mogul's $1,005 Wagyu steak. Her calm, dark eyes held a stark contrast to the sudden chaos around her. Thorne's state-of-the-art holographic tablet had slipped from his grasp just as Sophia was passing, and reflexively, she had caught it mid-air before it shattered on the pristine marble floor. A simple act of helpfulness that now spiraled into public humiliation. Just look at her, Thorne continued, gesturing at Sophia as if she were a piece of discarded trash. She's probably never seen a device that cost more than her entire life savings, and now she's gawking, wondering what it would be like to even hold something so valuable. The Gilded Spoon, famed as one of London's most exclusive dining establishments, had never witnessed such a demeaning spectacle. Multi-millionaire patrons lowered their champagne flutes. High-powered executives paused their hushed phone calls, and even the live jazz quartet hesitated on a soft note. Sophia had only been working there for 4 months, but all the employees knew her quiet, diligent story. A Cambridge architecture graduate with top honors. She had lost her prestigious corporate design job after blowing the whistle on blatant ethical violations and shoddy construction practices at her former firm. Now, while meticulously searching for a new, reputable opportunity, she was waiting tables to cover the exorbitant rent on her tiny flat in Greenwich. "Mr. Thorne," Sophia said for the first time, her voice low but incredibly firm, cutting through his tirade. "I apologize if I disturbed you. I was merely trying to prevent your property from being damaged." Thorne guffawed contemptuously, turning to the other diners as if performing for them. "Tried to stop it? Or did you try to swipe it? Everyone knows people like you can't resist when they see something valuable." The silence that followed was so profound it was deafening. Sophia felt the oppressive weight of every gaze on her. Some sympathetic, some morbidly curious, many simply mortified. But there was a peculiar glint in her eyes, a serene confidence that only exists in those who have navigated far more turbulent storms and discovered they possess the inherent fortitude not only to endure but to genuinely thrive. "Actually," Sophia replied, adjusting the subtle pin on her apron with a natural grace that made some patrons pause, "people like me learn very early on that true value isn't something you can hold in your hand or buy with money. It's built on integrity." Thorne's laughter died on his lips. Something in her unwavering tone, her perfectly upright posture, the way she didn't drop her gaze for even a second, made him realize he might have severely misjudged the person he was attempting to humiliate. There, under the collective gaze of contempt and curiosity, Sophia stood firm, like someone guarding a secret far too potent to be revealed before the precise, opportune moment. Leonard Thorne was utterly unaccustomed to being contradicted, let alone by someone he considered so far beneath his considerable social standing. Sophia's unexpected response about true value had momentarily thrown him off balance, but it only served to ignite his elitist fury even more. "Listen here, waitress." He rose from his chair, his voice cutting through the air like a laser beam. "You think you can lecture me? I approve more multi-million-pound contracts in an hour than you'll see in your entire pitiful lifetime." Sophia remained perfectly motionless, but her dark eyes held a depth that Thorne couldn't quite decipher. There was a disconcerting calmness there, as if she possessed knowledge he couldn't fathom, a secret she was quietly relishing. "Manager!" Thorne roared, slamming his open palm on the table, causing the expensive cutlery to clatter violently. "I want this incompetent person dismissed immediately, and I demand to know how an establishment like the Gilded Spoon allows such individuals to work here." Richard Davies, the general manager, approached with an almost comical urgency, his face a ghastly shade of pale. Leonard Thorne was the notoriously volatile son of one of Europe's largest property magnates. heir to a staggering 30 billion pounds global empire. His father, Arthur Thorne, owned 3 skyscrapers on the very same street where the Gilded Spoon was located. Mr. Thorne, my deepest apologies for any inconvenience this may have caused. Richard stammered, visibly sweating, his hands trembling slightly. We can certainly resolve this with the utmost discretion. Discreetly? Thorne scoffed contemptuously. There is absolutely nothing discreet about being publicly disrespected by an insignificant employee. Look at her. She probably crawled out of some derelict housing estate and now thinks she can address me as an equal. The overtly classist and racist words hung heavy in the air, causing several patrons to avert their gazes, clearly uncomfortable. Yet, Sophia showed no outward sign of emotional distress. In fact, something truly peculiar happened. An almost imperceptible, knowing smile touched the corner of her lips. Sir, I truly apologize if my attempt to assist led to this misunderstanding, Sophia said, her voice maintaining a respectful tone that sharply contrasted with Thorne's escalating hysteria. Perhaps it would be best if I simply stepped aside and allowed another server to attend to your table. Now you want to run away, do you? Thorne sneered, his lip curling in disdain. Typical. When the pressure mounts, people like you always bolt. It was then that Richard Davies noticed something that made his nerves fray even further. Sophia Reynolds was not behaving like any ordinary waitress. Her posture, the precise articulation of her words, even the way she held the serving tray, exuded a refined education and self-possession that fundamentally did not match the typical profile of the transient employees they usually hired. Sophia, Richard murmured discreetly, perhaps you should just go to the kitchen for a few minutes. But Sophia remained exactly where she was. Actually, Mr. Davies, I think it would be rather illuminating to clarify a few things right here and now. Thorne burst into a loud, mocking laugh, turning to the other diners as if he were the star of a one-man show. Listen to this. She wants to clarify things. A mere waitress wanting to explain herself to a Thorne. It's rather interesting that you bring up surnames, Mr. Thorne, Sophia replied with an unnervingly calm demeanor. Because, as it happens, I am intimately familiar with the Thorne family's reputation, especially concerning certain questionable practices in their recent property acquisitions and construction tenders. Thorne's sneering smile faltered for the very first time. Something in Sophia's tone, the way she deliberately emphasized questionable practices, sent an icy shiver down his spine. What? What are you talking about? He demanded, but his voice had lost some of its previous arrogant bluster. Sophia adjusted the small, almost invisible badge pin on her apron again, a gesture that now seemed less a nervous habit and more a subtle, deliberate signal. Well, sir, working in establishments such as this affords one the unique opportunity to meet some extraordinarily interesting people, high-level executives, forensic auditors, investigative journalists, even members of Parliament. They all seem to love to talk over dinner. Richard Davies frowned deeply. There was something about the precise, almost legalistic way Sophia spoke that absolutely did not fit the profile of a struggling architecture graduate working a temporary waiting job. It was as if she were performing a meticulously rehearsed role. Are you threatening me? Thorne asked, but his voice now trembled noticeably. Not at all, Sophia replied, her smile genuinely cordial, yet utterly disarming. Just observing that the world is far, far smaller than we often perceive. For instance, precisely 4 months ago, I served a table where Mr. Reginald Albright from the National Audit Office was openly discussing certain ongoing investigations involving major construction firms known for grossly inflated public works contracts and substandard materials. Thorne's blood ran ice cold. Albright was the very auditor responsible for scrutinizing his father's flagship urban regeneration projects. How could a simple waitress possibly know that? And just last week, Sophia continued, still in that unnervingly casual tone, I had the distinct pleasure of serving Chief Prosecutor Vivienne Cole, who was discussing high-profile cases of systematic tax evasion through elaborate offshore trusts. Truly fascinating conversations, I must admit. Thorne slowly sank back into his chair, his face visibly losing all color. Cole was the formidable prosecutor who had issued a cascade of subpoenas to the entire Thorne family just the previous month. Who are you?" he whispered, his bravado utterly shattered. Sophia finally smiled openly, and that's when every single person in the restaurant realized that something extraordinary, something profoundly unexpected, was unfolding. This was not the smile of a humiliated waitress. It was the calm, predatory smile of someone who had been not just 3, but perhaps 10 steps ahead during the entire unfolding confrontation. "I'm someone who learned a very valuable lesson when she was unfairly driven out of a major architectural firm 4 months ago," Sophia said, her voice now resonating with quiet authority as she slowly removed a card from a hidden pocket inside her apron. "I learned that sometimes you have to accept seemingly humble positions to be in the precise right place, at the precise right time, with the precise right people." The card she deliberately placed on the table made Thorne gasp audibly. It was an NCA badge. Beneath the prominent emblem it read, "Economic Crime Command. Name, Special Agent Sophia Reynolds." "See how small the world truly is, Mr. Thorne?" Sophia said, her voice dropping to a cool, almost conversational whisper. "During these past 4 months of waiting tables, I've had unparalleled access to the most interesting conversations between people who would never, in their wildest dreams, suspect that a simple black waitresses could be meticulously documenting every hushed word, every accidental admission, every revealing slip of the tongue." The gilded spoon had become a silent, echoing tomb. Thorne stared at the NCA badge as if it were his immediate death warrant. "And do you know what else?" Sophia continued, leaning forward ever so slightly. "Tonight, a very important person just committed a series of serious federal and national crimes right in front of me, in front of dozens of unimpeachable witnesses. Every new humiliation, every racist and classist word Thorne had hurled at her was not only documented by eyewitnesses, it was being meticulously recorded by an undercover federal agent who had just received an unwitting, full confession about information that could, quite literally, completely dismantle the entire Thorne family empire. What that arrogant, powerful man didn't know was that every single act of classist contempt and racist arrogance had been the final, conclusive nail in the coffin of a criminal dynasty that was about to discover that underestimating the right people can cost you immeasurably more than money. It can cost you your freedom. What Leonard Thorne couldn't comprehend was that his public humiliation had been the final, crucial piece needed to complete a complex national puzzle that Special Agent Sophia Reynolds had been meticulously assembling for exactly 120 days. "Agent Reynolds." A familiar, calm voice echoed from the tiny earpiece in her left ear, almost imperceptible to any observer. "We have confirmed high-quality recording of the entire incident. We have more than enough material to proceed." Sophia maintained her neutral expression while Thorne remained frozen in abject shock, staring at the NCA badge as if it were an optical illusion. The entire restaurant had transformed into a silent chamber, with all the customers suspended between intense curiosity and a palpable fear of becoming unwilling witnesses to something far grander and more devastating than they could have ever imagined. "Mr. Thorne," Sophia said calmly, sliding the badge back into her apron pocket, "I believe it would be in your absolute best interest to speak with me privately, especially concerning the multi-million-pound transfers your company made to shell corporations in the British Virgin Islands last month." Thorne's face went from pale to a ghastly mottled gray. Those transfers were classified top secret, known only to him, his father, and the corporation's chief financial officer. How could an undercover agent possibly know about transactions that not even the family's most trusted lawyers were privy to? You can't prove anything," he stammered, but his voice was now a mere trembling whisper, like a leaf caught in a gale. Sophia smiled softly. "Actually, I can. You see, sir, during these 4 months, serving that discreet table over there in the far corner," she pointed subtly to table 15, "I had the particular privilege of serving dinner to Mr. Alistair Thorne, your younger brother, every Tuesday evening. Thorne's blood ran cold. Alistair was the undisputed weakest link in the family. A 26-year-old cocaine addict whom his father kept rigorously out of the main business, precisely because of his notorious tendency to talk far too much when under the influence. Alistair simply loves to talk after his third scotch. Sophia continued, her voice maintaining that eerily calculated, respectful tone. Especially about how the family meticulously moves money around to avoid taxes. Fascinating conversations, truly. About shell companies, intricate offshore accounts, and even how you acquired prime inner-city land from vulnerable working-class communities for next to nothing through aggressive legal intimidation tactics. Richard Davies, the manager, had discreetly backed away, fully realizing he was witnessing something far beyond a simple customer complaint or a public scandal. Other restaurant employees watched from the shadowy entrance to the kitchen, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief as the cinematic twist unfolded before their very eyes. But what truly impressed me, Sophia continued, discreetly removing a small, almost invisible digital recorder from her pocket, were the conversations I quite literally overheard at Table 12, where Thorne Holdings' chief financial officer, Mr. Giles Fenton, discussed in excruciating detail with his wife how they systematically falsified environmental impact reports to obtain crucial building permits in protected greenbelt areas. Thorne tried to stand, but his legs suddenly gave way, and he slumped back into his chair. That's entrapment. You can't use that information. Entrapment would imply that I had induced you or your family to commit crimes, Sophia replied, maintaining her educational calm tone. But you were already committing the crimes, Mr. Thorne. I merely documented them. And I must say, the audio quality here at the Gilded Spoon is quite exceptional. Every single word, every precise detail, every accidental confession has been captured with crystal clarity. At that precise moment, a tall, impeccably dressed man with a discreet, authoritative bearing approached the table. He was of formidable stature, around 40 years old, with a posture that radiated an undeniable federal authority. Thorne recognized him instantly from photos in the national newspapers. It was Special Agent Mark Sullivan, head of the NCA's Economic Crime Command for London. Mr. Thorne, Sullivan said, discreetly presenting his ID. I'm Agent Sullivan, Agent Reynolds' supervisor. I'd very much like to discuss some rather significant irregularities we've uncovered in your family's operations. Operation Golden Blueprint, Sophia murmured, as if explaining a complex menu item. Initiated 6 months ago after we received multiple anonymous tips about systematic corruption involving Thorne Holdings. 3 months of preliminary intelligence gathering, followed by 4 months of direct infiltration. Thorne looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route or perhaps someone who could miraculously save him. But the other customers now actively looked away, clearly uncomfortable with being associated with the rapidly unfolding disaster. Some were already discreetly signaling to the waiters, urgently requesting their bills. The exquisite irony, Sophia continued, her voice devoid of triumph but heavy with truth, is that I genuinely needed this job. I was effectively blacklisted from my previous architectural career after reporting irregularities, which, interestingly enough, involved money laundering for the very same corporation I'm now investigating. Sullivan nodded gravely. Agent Reynolds was absolutely instrumental in this entire operation. Her exceptional ability to remain completely invisible while meticulously documenting private conversations allowed us to build an irrefutable, rock-solid case against an entire network of corruption. Every Tuesday, Sophia explained to Thorne, who was now visibly trembling, Alistair would arrive here at 8 p.m. Every Monday, Mr. Giles Fenton would have dinner with his wife and casually discuss details he should never, ever reveal in public. And every Wednesday, your own father, Arthur Thorne, would meet here with local council members to negotiate fraudulent contracts and development schemes. Thorne finally found his voice, but it came out as a desperate, pathetic whisper. My father. You have something against my father? Sophia and Sullivan exchanged meaningful glances. Mr. Thorne, Sullivan said softly, Your father is being arrested at this very moment in his penthouse office, along with Alistair Thorne, Mr. Giles Fenton, and 8 other senior corporate executives. Leonard Thorne's world completely collapsed in that instant. Thorne Holdings, the vast empire that had been meticulously built over 4 relentless decades, was being dismantled while he was humiliating a waitress because of the color of her skin and her perceived social status. The operation was coordinated to happen simultaneously, Sophia explained, checking her wrist. While we were having this discussion here, NCA teams were executing search and seizure warrants on 15 different Thorne family properties, offices, private residences, sprawling country estates, hidden warehouses. Everything is being searched as we speak. It can't be, Thorne murmured, pulling out his gleaming high-end mobile phone with trembling hands. The screen displayed a horrifying cascade of 57 missed calls from the company office, 23 desperate messages from his personal assistant, and several breaking news notifications alerting him to an unprecedented, ongoing federal operation against Thorne Holdings. "Oh, but it can," Sophia said, her professional courtesy now tinged with an almost imperceptible satisfaction. "And do you know what else? During all these months of being systematically treated as invisible by people like you, I've learned that true arrogance isn't merely in how you treat your perceived inferiors. It's in believing you're simply too clever, too powerful, to ever get caught." Sullivan stepped closer. "Mr. Thorne, I'm going to need you to come with us for immediate questioning. There are a considerable number of urgent questions we need to clarify regarding your direct involvement in the company's extensive criminal operations." "Involvement?" Thorne tried to protest, his voice cracking. "I didn't know anything. I didn't participate in any crime." Sophia chuckled softly, a sound that echoed eerily in the tense silence of the restaurant. "Interesting, because in the recordings we have of your phone conversations, court authorized, of course, you discuss in explicit detail with your father how to pressure vulnerable communities through fabricated lawsuits and deliberate, fraudulent land valuation reports." The final revelation hit Thorne like a brutal physical blow. His own words, his own calculated criminal decisions had been meticulously captured and documented. There was no escape, no denial possible. "The sheer beauty of justice," Sophia said, adjusting her apron pin one last time, "is that it works most efficiently when those who utterly despise it feel far too secure, far too untouchable, to even bother hiding their crimes. You built an empire based on the absolute certainty that you were above the law. Today, Mr. Thorne, you discovered that absolutely no one is above the law." The other patrons in the restaurant watched in absolute, stunned silence as Sullivan discreetly signaled to 2 other NCA agents who had just entered through the front doors. Leonard Thorne, heir to a £30 billion fortune, was about to discover that all his immense wealth could not purchase his freedom. What he didn't know was that the worst was yet to come. Because while he thought he had lost only money and status, Sophia Reynolds was about to reveal that his racist and classist actions that very night had been broadcast live to far more people than he could ever possibly imagine, including those who would determine not only his legal fate, but his social future, forever. "Live broadcast?" Thorne repeated, his voice a desperate, barely audible whisper. "What live broadcast?" Sophia smiled softly, removing a small, almost imperceptible device from her apron pocket. "This microphone, Mr. Thorne, was connected directly to the National Crime Agency's official social media networks. Every racist word, every classist slur, every single threat, every display of white supremacy you have uttered in the last 40 minutes has been broadcast in real time to over 500,000 people across the UK and beyond." Thorne's blood ran colder than ice. Sullivan nodded solemnly. "Standard protocol for operations of significant public interest. The public has an absolute right to see precisely how certain individuals use their immense privilege to perpetuate systemic injustice." "No, it can't be," Thorne stammered, grabbing his phone with violently trembling hands. The screen was exploding with notifications, mentions, comments, shares, retweets. The video of the broadcast had already surpassed 1 million views across multiple platforms. Hashtag Thorn Racist is currently among the top trending topics in the country. Mr. Thorn, Sophia reported calmly, almost clinically. Your statements about people like me and places like this are being meticulously analyzed by civil rights experts on national television as we speak. Thorn read some comments with growing, stomach-churning horror. Racist billionaire humiliates undercover NCA agent. Shocking footage. Thorn Air reveals deep-seated prejudice at luxury restaurant. Thorn Holdings, family business or criminal enterprise? The irony, Sophia continued, is that every single word you used to belittle me was being documented not just for our criminal case, but for all of Britain to witness. Corporations are already canceling lucrative contracts with Thorn Holdings based solely on what they have witnessed today. Richard Davies, the manager, watched in absolute horrified silence, realizing he was witnessing the real-time, spectacular collapse of one of the most powerful families in the country. Other customers whispered amongst themselves, some recognizing Thorn from the live broadcasts they were now feverishly following on their own phones. But that's not all, Sullivan added grimly. Mr. Thorn, while we've been talking here, prosecutors in 3 different jurisdictions have already issued arrest warrants based on the undeniable evidence we've gathered. Your family empire will be dismantled completely. Thorn frantically tried to call his father, but the call went straight to voicemail. He tried Alistair. Same chilling result. Mr. Giles Fenton, the CFO's line was dead. One by one, every single contact who could possibly save him was utterly inaccessible. They're all in federal custody, Sophia explained softly. And thanks to today's live broadcast, public opinion has already irrevocably formed its judgment of the moral character of the Thorn family. Thorn's mobile phone began to ring incessantly, a relentless, terrifying peal. Journalists, television producers, civil rights activists, all desperate for statements about the viral video. Each ring was another hammer blow, irrevocably sealing his social and professional fate. You ruined my life, he whispered, tears beginning to stream down his perfectly sculpted face. Actually, Sophia replied, adjusting her apron pin one last time, you ruined your own life, Mr. Thorn. We merely documented it. For 4 months, your family confessed to egregious crimes out loud, believing that black waitresses were far too invisible to ever truly matter. Sullivan signaled discreetly, and 2 imposing NCA agents approached the table. Mr. Thorn, we need to go now. There are many serious accusations awaiting your explanation, and the public is extremely interested in hearing them. Wait, Thorn pleaded, grabbing Sophia's arm. You don't understand. I can change. I can make massive donations, support charities. I can make amends. Sophia looked at his hand, clutching her arm, then into his desperate, pleading eyes. Sir, for 40 minutes, you treated me as if I were your property, as if I had no inherent worth. Now, faced with the immediate, undeniable consequences, you suddenly want to negotiate and buy your way out of accountability? This only confirms that you do not truly grasp the profound gravity of your actions. Leonard Thorn was escorted away by the agents while other customers discreetly filmed with their mobile phones. His walk of shame through the Gilded Spoon restaurant would be documented from multiple angles, adding further, devastating fuel to the media firestorm he had so carelessly ignited. The enduring beauty of modern justice, Sophia murmured to Sullivan as they watched Thorn being led away, is that it no longer takes place solely in courtrooms. It happens in real time, in front of witnesses from all corners of the world. Outside, a ravenous crowd of reporters waited, cameras flashing. Leonard Thorn, heir to £30 billion, discovered that all his immense fortune could not buy back his reputation or reverse the viral broadcast that had exposed him in his most cruel and prejudiced form. What he didn't know was that Sophia had meticulously saved the most devastating revelation for last, because while he believed he had lost only money and status, he was about to discover that his actions that night would trigger profound social changes that would forever alter how billion-pound corporations treat their employees, and that the young waitress he had so callously despised had a deeply personal story that would make his revenge even more poetic and utterly complete. 6 months later, Special Agent Sophia Reynolds was in the NCA headquarters in London, meticulously finalizing the comprehensive report that would definitively close the Thorn Holdings case. Through her office window, she watched the vibrant city bustle, a city that had just witnessed one of the most spectacular high-profile falls in British business history. Thorn Holdings had been completely dismantled. Arthur Thorn Sr. had been sentenced to 28 years in prison for racketeering, systematic money laundering, and egregious tax fraud. Alistair Thorn Jr. had received 18 years for insider trading and drug trafficking. Chief Financial Officer Mr. Giles Fenton had been sentenced to 17 years for falsifying federal documents and defrauding investors. Leonard Thorn, the arrogant heir who had publicly humiliated Sophia that night at the Gilded Spoon, received the heaviest sentence of all, 30 years for aggravated hate crimes, extortion, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. The viral video of his racist and classist outburst had become crucial court evidence, unequivocally demonstrating his character and his predisposition to crimes motivated by deep-seated prejudice. The live broadcast fundamentally changed everything, Sophia explained to a group of new NCA agents in training. It wasn't just about documenting complex financial crimes. It was about starkly demonstrating to society precisely how systemic racism and classism operate at the very highest levels of privilege and power. What Sophia had never publicly revealed was her profoundly personal connection to the case. 22 years earlier, when she was only 6 years old, her family had been brutally evicted from their small, ancestral terraced home in East London after Thorn Holdings, through fraudulent court proceedings and aggressive legal tactics, bought the entire block for a major redevelopment project. Her father, an honest, hard-working black tradesman, had lost the family home that had supported 3 generations of the Reynolds family. The crushing stress of the eviction and subsequent bankruptcy caused the fatal heart attack that tragically killed her father at the impossibly young age of 45. Sophia grew up in grinding urban poverty, raised alone by her resilient mother, who worked punishing double shifts as a domestic worker to meticulously save enough money for Sophia's education. Every racist and classist word Leonard Thorn uttered that night, Sophia continued, her voice resonating with quiet conviction to the new agents, echoed over 2 decades of profound injustices my family had suffered in silence. But instead of seeking personal revenge, I channeled that pain directly into serving a greater, more encompassing justice. The operation had resulted in the recovery of an astonishing £600 million in criminal assets, which were meticulously redistributed to the very working-class communities and vulnerable families harmed by the Thorn Corporation over decades. The Reynolds family was among the beneficiaries, receiving the deed to a new, fully paid-for home in the very same revitalized community, plus significant compensation that allowed Sophia's mother to finally retire with the dignity she so rightfully deserved. Leonard Thorn, who once owned luxurious penthouses in 5 different global cities, now shared a cramped 2-square-meter cell with a prisoner convicted of petty theft. His £30 billion inheritance had been completely confiscated by the HMRC. No assets, no influential contacts, no power to buy elite lawyers. The irony, Sophia smiled discreetly, is that he is in the very same state prison where my cousin was unjustly convicted 10 years ago for a crime he absolutely did not commit. The system he helped keep corrupt now prosecutes him with the full, unforgiving force of the law. Richard Davies, the manager of the Gilded Spoon, had been promoted to regional general manager after bravely testifying against Leonard Thorn. The restaurant experienced a phenomenal 400% increase in patronage, with people flocking specifically to see the exact spot where social justice had been served live for the entire world to witness. The story inspired significant legislative changes. Parliament passed Sophia's Law, establishing harsher penalties for crimes of discrimination in commercial establishments, and creating a national fund to protect workers who are victims of racial or class-based harassment by influential customers. "You have to understand," Sophia told the new agents, her gaze unwavering, "that the real victory wasn't merely seeing Leonard Thorne in prison. It was discovering that my inherent dignity was never for sale, even when he desperately tried to buy it with public humiliation." Sullivan, her supervisor, nodded proudly, his face etched with respect. Sophia had received 4 promotions in 6 months, becoming the youngest agent to head an Economic Crime Command division in NCA history. Prestigious universities now vied to offer her lectures on her groundbreaking case, which quickly became a benchmark in law, ethics, and business schools across the nation. The biggest lesson, Sophia concluded, meticulously organizing the final case files, is that those who desperately try to diminish others always reveal far more about their own profound weaknesses than about those they so viciously attack. Leonard Thorne thought he was proving his superiority. In reality, he was meticulously documenting his own complete destruction. Today, Leonard Thorne wakes up at 5 a.m. in a federal prison, cleans toilets for £2 a day, and eats meals prepared by cooks who earn less in a year than he once spent on a single business lunch. Sophia Reynolds wakes up in her own beautiful apartment in London, directs critical investigations that protect millions of ordinary Britons, and inspires countless young black men and women never to accept being treated as inferior. "He tried to teach me my place," Sophia murmured, carefully putting away the last document from the case. "He ended up learning his." The best revenge is not to stoop to the level of those who try to put us down. It's to rise so incredibly high that they can never, ever reach us to hurt us again. Have you ever faced prejudice that tried to define your limits? Share your story in the comments below about how you overcame those barriers. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that dignity always wins over arrogance, and that sometimes justice just needs a little help from us to work perfectly.